Hello Caffeine Fiends and welcome to another coffee review video for www.getbean.com. I'm Vince the Mean Bean Machine and today we have a slightly different coffee review. So those of you who watch my videos regularly may remember that last week I reviewed Singh Beans, Amalfi blend that said the origin of the coffee was Italian, and I didn't give it a positive review. I didn't particularly like the taste of it. It wasn't up to scratch. So after watching the video, Singh Beans reached out to me, and rather than just kind of saying, "What are you on about, mate?" they were very gracious, and actually sent a message about the review that I shall kind of read to you. So here's how they reacted. So they watched the video and they did reach out to me saying, "Hi Vincent, thank you so much for your review." Very gracious of them, especially since it wasn't particularly positive. "We've watched your video and just like to add to some of your comments." Now at this point, I start thinking, here we go, I'm about to get a mouthful about how I don't know what I'm talking about, blah, blah, blah. But they were very polite, and they said, 1. The origin. It is a classic Italian blend that was given to us by a very famous coffee roaster, so we thought it only fair to honour his contribution. We will update our website accordingly, so thank you. So they've taken on board my comments about it not being, you can't really say the origin is Italian. The beans aren't from Italy. Italy doesn't grow beans. But they've taken that on board, and that's really that's really good of them. That's really positive for an company to kind of say, "All right, we've heard you. We'll address that." So that's cool. 2. The grassy dark notes you experienced may be down to how you extracted. Maybe. We would typically recommend lowering the temperature of water for extraction to get the sweeter notes. I mean, that is a fair point in terms of I use like a DeLonghi home machine. It's incredibly hard to mess about with its settings. Once you've got it set, you can do some slight tweaks, but not a lot. So they may have a fair point, but those settings are, standard. So you're not expecting, they're middle of the road, so they're not going to be too hot, I don't think, but they may have a point on that. If that's not possible with your setup, maybe try a coarser grind. Now, I'm pretty sure it wasn't my grind. It was a fairly coarse grind. I have a very impressive kind of burr grinder. Blah, blah, blah. However, after those comments, they then said, "We'd love you to try some of our other beans and see if they're more of your preference," which is fair enough. And they actually sent through a selection of more beans. So this is what we're working with this week. So I've just received a box of beans from Singh Beans, and we're going to do some research on their site, see which one naturally kind of lends itself to my taste and give it a go. So it's really kind of good of them. They've sent 4 different types of beans. And they could have just gone, "Muppet, he doesn't know what he's talking about." Or they could have really gone in on me. They could have really just gone ham. But no, they were gracious. They were gracious and they were decent enough to go, "We think that, we understand that's not to your taste. Please try some other stuff." And it's also really nice of them because I'm not really influencer level. There's 213 of you subscribing to my YouTube channel, and my TikTok gets some relatively decent views, but I'm no influencer. A micro influencer possibly, but even then, that's a stretch. But they went, "No, this dude's commenting on our coffee. Send him some more." So fair play to them. Fair play. So what have they sent us? So we got Singh Beans Ethiopian light roast, honey butter citrus. Very interesting. We got Singh Beans Brazilian dark chocolate light roast. Okay. It's interesting that only has the singular tasting note. But I mean, on their website, I think they have more kind of tasting notes. To each blend or origin. You've got Honduran milk chocolate, and you've got Colombian licorice. Now, that's interesting because I would have thought milk chocolate. I would have associated milk chocolate more with Colombia, and licorice. Have I ever had a coffee that's claimed licorice? Really interesting. Anyway, so what's interesting is they've all just gone with like the singular, I guess, assuming I'm making an assumption, the most powerful kind of note there. But they all state their origin in their name, which, is probably a big kind of up yours to my comments about their Amalfi blend. But no, so they've been really decent about this. So what I'm going to do, before anything else, is I'm going to go away, look at their website, do a bit of research on each one of these, and then we're going to pick the one that I think will probably lend itself most to my taste. Instantly, I'm drawn to the Honduran milk chocolate, but we'll see if they mention any other tasting notes. So Ethiopian has like 3 honey butter citrus. That actually sounds really nice. Okay, so this is going to be a tough one for me because I naturally am drawn to Colombian coffee, but licorice is not a taste. Not a taste I would associate with Colombian coffee, and it's not necessarily a taste I particularly like. That Ethiopian honey butter citrus does sound interesting, but that, to my mind, African coffees are good for black coffee and not milky coffee. So I'm naturally drawn to the Honduran milk chocolate. Anyway, I'll go away, do some research, we'll pick out what we like, and then we'll do the normal review. So that's just the background to this week's review. And here goes. So I'm back with my chosen coffee. I did go with Honduran in the end. Now, interestingly, on the site, it says zesty, and you might get kind of hints of lychee or apricot, depending on the extraction temperature. And the Colombian kind of says it's more chocolatey. So there still seems to be a disconnect on site and labelling. But, those things happen. I'm not going to hold that against them. I'm just saying, I've picked this saying it's milk chocolate and it may well have more zesty tones. So I feel like they may be tones that added on. So I think you buy it kind of going, right, that's a milk chocolate coffee. And then it has those subtler notes, I think is the general is the vibe I'm getting. I may be wrong, but that's how I feel it is. Anyway, so I've gone for the Honduran, just because both ways those notes sound interesting to me. And as always, I've got my espresso shot, my oat latte, and my cup of water just to cleanse the palate in between. So usually these bags will cost you $12.95 for a bag of 250 grams of whole bean. I very kindly got 4 for free, so I'm not complaining. There. Yeah. So what am I expecting? I don't know. You got those tasting notes of kind of milk chocolatey, and then with a bit of zest, be it apricot zest or lychee zest. I feel like lychee would be too delicate a flavour to come through with a milk chocolatey blend. It's not a blend, it's single origin, it's Honduran, sorry. But I feel like it would be too delicate a flavour. But then you do have things like, I say that, lychee is very sweet. I don't know where I've got this notion of it being delicate. Very sweet, very sugary. But the actual taste of it is quite delicate, and you just kind of get sugar a lot of the time. And, in things like lychee martinis or lychee flavoured things, it tends to be the lychee syrup, doesn't it? I don't know. Anyway, so we will see. We will see. Let's try the espresso shot. Actually, let's have some water first. And then we will try the espresso shot. So, first things first. Thank you very much, Singh Beans, for sending these through. Cheers. Smells sweet. Interesting. Interesting. I'm not getting too much kind of cloying darkness from it. Smells sweet. It's a light roast, so it should be quite caffeinated but not dark. I think it says it's a light roast. Yeah. So, here goes. That is interesting. I'm not particularly getting milk chocolate, but there is a tone of... It suggests a sort of florality? Is that a word? It is now. I'm claiming it. Florality. Sounds like a Mortal Kombat thing. Yeah. So there is a suggestion that there's a chocolatiness to it. But when they say lychee, you kind of go, yeah, there is a sort of... It's not a super sweet... The problem is you think lychee and you think super sweet, but that sort of delicate, almost floral but more fruity note is there, if you see what I mean. It's not a floral note. I would say it's a fruity note, but it sits in between the two of floral and acidic. Not an acidic, of floral and fruity. So it's not quite sweet, it's not quite acidic, and lychee is almost bang on the money if you can get past the lychee should be really sweet. Kind of, it tastes like lychee but without the sweetness, if that makes sense. It's yeah, that's an odd one. It's really pleasant. Talking about the rest of the coffee, let's gloss over that note. It coats the tongue nicely. It doesn't clutch at the back of the throat. It is quite smooth, but that note is just troubling me because I just can't pick it out. And lychee makes sense. And I guess apricot would make sense of it. But there's this underlying kind of note that you kind of go, that's not chocolate, but I can see why it would be pitched as chocolate. And I reckon as an oat latte, that will be really chocolatey, and that sort of fruity, not fruity note will disappear. But yeah, that's kind of a head scratcher. But I like it. It's as an espresso shot. Let's finish it off. As an espresso shot, that's quite mild, but there's these hints of complexity that you kind of go, I can't pin those down. And I guess if you really kind of sat back and thought about it, you would go, yeah, apricot makes sense, lychee potentially makes sense, but there's no sweetness pushing those. It's not sweet enough to really push those to the fore. So you have to really kind of think about those tasting notes and kind of go, yeah, okay. So it's not intensely dark either, which would make sense with the milk chocolate. You kind of go, there is a chocolatey note, but it's not intense. It's not a super rich one. But it coats the tongue. It coats the mouthfeel is incredible on that because it coats the tongue. It's not like thick and viscous and hanging around, but it does its job. It's not a watery coffee. It sits there and you kind of go, I am still now tasting that note and that I can't pin down. Which is really, really interesting, but it's there. And as an espresso, like I'm not an espresso drinker, but I'd happily have that as an espresso because it's not too intense. It's not too acidic. Some espresso drinkers may well go no, I need something kind of sharp to really wake me up. That's why I drink espresso. but I think that is a really smooth espresso for those who aren't natural espresso drinkers. And as a black coffee, I think it might be almost too mild as a long black coffee for many. But I'm intrigued to see how it would balance out with the oat milk. So we'll give it a go as oat milk. Again, cleanse the palate. So what am I expecting? I'm expecting that milk chocolate to just really come to the fore, and that sort of, let's call it that lychee, to just kind of die away, and it just to become quite milky and chocolatey, and that to be the overwhelming sense. I don't think any of those notes are particularly sharp enough to really pull themselves through. But I really like that I'm still thinking about it. It's still kind of on my tongue, and I'm going, yeah, that's yeah. But I just don't know. And it's a nice taste, but it's just without that sweetness. And I'm like, is it fruity? Can you have non-sweet fruit? No, you can't. But as a tasting note, yes, I suppose, because you kind of go, yeah, that evokes that, but without the sharp sugariness of it, which makes sense. So let's give it a go as the oat latte. I was quite happy with the pour. I was going for a latte heart, but ballsed it up. But regardless of that, yeah, there's yeah, I think unfortunately it doesn't, it's not powerful enough to really push through the oat milk there, but that chocolatiness definitely just sits underneath it, and you kind of go, that's a really nice pleasant milk chocolatey, like milk chocolate is bang on the money. You kind of go, yeah, that's smooth and that's rich, not too sweet, but that milk chocolate note, yeah, is definitely there. It's almost a nuttiness to it, but yeah, there's sort of a nutty aftertaste to it, which isn't mentioned in the notes. But yeah, those fruity tones don't come through later on. I'm really intrigued to see if those tasting notes are actually, correct, or if there is a disconnect between label and website. But I feel like as an espresso, you do get those kind of an almost fruity taste, but it's not sweet enough to really pick out. And then as the latte, you kind of go, yeah, that's a really down to earth chocolatey latte. That's really thrown me. There is definitely a disconnect between the espresso and the latte. There's a massive disconnect. So it's really interesting that there's obviously some complexity that I'm completely missing. Because you kind of go, yeah, I would never label that as fruity. Like, just because there's a sharpness that I associate with fruity notes. But I 100% understand where they're coming from with a fruity tone, and I will hold my hand, like if they say no, you've got that wrong, I will hold my hands up and go, all right, but I really liked the espresso just for its fact to get me kind of thinking about it. It's not an espresso taste that you taste regularly. And Honduras are one of the big coffee producers. I mean, they're a small country. They don't produce a lot in bulk, but they're competing with the big South American names of Colombia and Costa Rica and whomever else. And they're doing good coffee. So I've definitely had Honduran coffee before. So it surprises me that note surprises me. If you see what I mean, I'm not. But I enjoyed the surprise. The oat latte, I would have, if you'd gone, yeah, that's your standard Colombian chocolatey latte, I would have believed you. It's a very nice, very milky, very, I want to say rich, but yeah, very rich kind of milk chocolatey sensation, but with this sort of woody nuttiness aftertaste, which isn't mentioned in the tasting notes. So I'm going to go away and think about it. Really think about it, because I am confused as heck. But thank you to Singh Beans for being gracious enough to send those out and, you know, mess with my mind. Well, yeah, I'm going to go away, think about it, write up some final thoughts. In the meantime, do hit those like and subscribe buttons. There'll be a little subscribe button down in the corner of the video, or, you know, all the like and subscribe buttons underneath. Check us out on TikTok at GetBeanedCoffee. Yeah. And, of course, at www.getbeaned.com. Right, see you in a sec. My final thoughts on the Singh Beans Honduras single origin. So, really interesting tone as an espresso. Not too sharp or intense, but with a fruity undertone that feels like it should be sweeter. So that kind of lychee apricot note is there, but you kind of go, that feels, that taste does not equate to the lack of sweetness, if you see what I mean. And I like that. There's a complexity there that kind of throws your brain a little bit. As a latte, it loses all of that complexity. It all just disappears as a latte, but it becomes a very pleasant milk chocolate, very standard latte, but it's very chocolatey, almost. There's an almost honeyish note to it, but that would suggest more of a sweetness, which isn't there. But it becomes quite a standard chocolatey latte, and you kind of go, well, there's nothing that really pushes that. There's no kind of caramel that pushes that chocolatiness forward. It just becomes quite standard, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, but I feel like it loses that complexity, so it becomes a standard chocolatey latte. However, if you're a black coffee drinker or an espresso drinker, I'd give that a go. So overall, I'm giving that 3.5 stars. I'd give it 4 if there were just something a little more to the latte, but I don't. It's not an origin, or it's not a bean that I think lends itself. It's not a roast that lends itself to the latte, and that's fine. Black coffee drinkers, give that a go. Give it a go, 100%. But yeah. Thank you very much for Singh Beans for sending those through. Hopefully we'll do more in the future. Do hit those like and subscribe buttons, as I said earlier, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.